This is a drawing of mine called Golden Plover with Egg, and it aims to show golden plovers in a landscape, an imaginary landscape, in various guises or forms, in flight and on the ground, nesting on, sitting on eggs, and standing up at the edge of the sea. Now, it's a drawing that's made up entirely of lines, and the purpose of this video is to show how I went from a drawing of lines to a laser cut and engraved finished article like this. Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So how can light produce something like this, which has got tones ranging from, we've got three basic tones here. We've got the palest, what I call whites, these golds, golden colour, which is obviously pertinent to the bird itself, golden plover. These blacks, in inverted commas, because they're not entirely black. And then we have this mid-tone grey area. How is all this achieved with a beam of light, with only a beam of light that's just cutting it into a piece of plywood following my design? What's the process that I've created or following to create something like this with just a beam of light? Just to be clear, there is no pigment whatsoever used on this drawing, engraving. The white is the white of the wood. That's the natural whiteness of the wood. The dark black areas are the most heavily burnt parts of the wood. The golds are a cutting of the wood in a style that mimics gold, to the point that if you see, we've got the very darkest areas, the black spots on the golden plover are as dark as this black area, and the areas in between these black areas, which by the way are troughs, they're actually engraved into the wood. They're like a millimetre deep. This wood has been burnt away. The area between the black areas, black spot areas, is actually just scorch marks. So I'm controlling scorch marks and burning in predefined shapes to give this golden effect. The white areas have been specially masked off so that during all this burning and scorching, this native wood is completely unaffected. So this is masked off. The black areas are areas of maximum engraving or etching, but still the area is masked off so that the area immediately adjacent to the black areas is not polluted by scorching or smoke. So there's some masking going on to achieve these different zones of colour or scorching, if you like, or burning. The general background colour, this mid to dirty white colour, is the effect of more general scorching that's not, and this area is obviously not being masked. So we've got an area of white in inverted commas, which is being masked, so there is no pollution, degradation in the colour or purity of that wood. So that's the natural colour of the wood. This is the maximum area of engraving, etching, with maximum burning, so that's the darkest. We have this intermediate controlled area between some very dark spots and polluted regions of wood adjacent to that, which is containing the scorching and smoke to give this golden effect. And then we have this lightly smoked stroke scorched area, which is like the background, the ground, which is the natural effect of all the smoke and scorching generally that's going on inside the laser bed, while all this engraving and cutting is going on. So this coloration, in inverted commas, effect was crucial to this piece. This piece is about golden plovers, and my rendition of how dandy they look in their summer plumage, both males and females. In the summer, they have their golden backs, golden spotted backs, become quite exaggerated. They have this white fringe or mantle, and then they have this jet black belly and face area. Sometimes they have spots of white on in this black region as well, which you may be able to see on some of these flying birds. The underwing of these birds is generally white, although sometimes some gold does extend, some golden patches or patternation does extend into the white underwing area, but the overwing area is always golden. The top of the wing and the back is always golden. So I'm trying to depict that dandiness, that contrast in gold, white and black in this bird, which is really, really striking in its summer plumage, purely using the power of a laser. As I said, this is entirely hand-drawn. And done with the knowledge that I was going to use a laser to make this piece. So the different areas have been designed or drawn in such a way that I knew I would be taking advantage of cutting, scoring, etching effects, with bearing in mind I would be masking off certain areas to encourage contamination or to exclude contamination or scorching from the general, the fire, the path of fire that a laser beam is. Some of the ideas in this piece are to do with the puzzling nature of various things in nature with a capital N, and I'm using puzzle concepts to depict or reflect on some puzzling ideas in nature. The main one of this is why they're called golden. When they're not gold, they're actually just an ochre colour. Gold is a very shiny, metallic, dense subject, which is the opposite of what a bird. A bird is a very efficient, light creature, very light in proportion to its size, very light in proportion to its wingspan, and they're not gold, they're an ochre colour. And why are they so dandy? Because in a sense, making them this conspicuous in nature makes them stand out as prey for birds like peregrine falcons or something. So these are ideas of interest to me. But when they hunker down, the gold can actually work in their favour because it can make them look camouflaged. I have seen flocks of birds like this flying across a beach or a shoreline where their white is very conspicuous. The white of their wings and the contrast of their colours is very conspicuous. But when they land, I've almost lost track while I've been filming them. I've almost lost track of where they are because they've kind of disappeared. So these birds, when they hunker down on something like sand and pebbles, they can actually, their coloration can work in their favour. Another piece of nature I'm keen to explore using this metaphor of puzzles is camouflage. So on the shoreline here, we have a number of creatures whose natural shape and colour is wonderfully camouflaging, both in terms of shape, movement and colour, where a potential predator would miss them if a potential predator was flying or walking past. They, unless the creature moved, it would be very hard to pick out the actual creatures. Another thing I find fascinating is perspective. We all learn about perspective. We know, we gain information about the distance of food, potential predators, finding a mate and things like that. With vision, we pick up lots of clues about our environment. And one of the key ones is perspective. And if you look at this drawing, there are parts of the puzzle which are very oblique compared to, here on the left, pieces that are straighter. So take that line of pieces here, that's going in a straight line, straight up perpendicular from the bottom towards the center. Whereas if we take a line to the side, these pieces are very oblique. This is me representing perspective, because perspective tends to follow what's called a vanishing point, where there's some sort of hypothetical central point in an image where forms and lines seem to converge. And this is something we learn over time from birth, as we grow into adulthood. All animals with vision, we pick up on this cue of convergence and how perspective can help us interact with our environment in terms of knowing how far prey away is, or how close a potential mate or food is, and we can make decisions as to whether we want to move there or move away, and how fast something is moving toward us or going away from us. And this is all picked up from this visual cue of the convergence of lines in our vision. And I find that just staggering that we have the capacity to understand that without really without even being conscious about it. It's also a question of size, because if you look, this largest of the plovers, golden plovers, and we have these smaller ones in the background, and smaller still flying in the air. And what we don't assume is that that's a much bigger bird, and these are smaller birds, and these are smaller still. We have the innate knowledge, not innate, no, sorry, that's completely the wrong word. We build up a model over time about expected size of different things in the environment, and we make assumptions, like we assume that these golden plovers, for example, are all the same size, and based on that model that they're all the same size, we compute that those that are smaller are further away. Similarly, with movement, based on the size of something, as it moves, we compute speed. Now, something small in the distance will visually appear to be moving slower, but something closer to us that's larger, moving at the same speed, will visually be moving quicker, but we will make a compensation for that due to our model of perspective, our model of distance. So even though the closer bird is visually moving faster across our field of view, we can infer that the birds further away that visually are moving slower are actually moving at a similar speed. And that helps us compute things like how quickly that bird or potential prey will take to arrive at us, and what action we might need to take to avoid it, and so on. Anyway, so let's get back now to how I achieved these effects by laser from my original drawing. So this is our prepared piece of plywood, poplar plywood. It's been ground and sanded to 400 grit. It's very soft. It's also been varnished, deep penetrated varnish, and this is now very smooth, pale, and in reasonably impervious surface. Note how white it is. This is our ground. This is our white paper that we then put scorch marks and cut black or very dark brown cut marks on, but we want to hide or shield parts of this to bring out the whites that we're looking for. So this is the native piece that we're dealing with, and this is what we're trying to achieve. No pigments whatsoever. It's entirely the effect of burning wood, and we're trying to get, in this case, 4 tones of colour. This white is just the native colour of that board. That's as white as we're going to get. So we need to protect these white areas from any kind of discoloration, contamination. So for this we need a mask. If we mask off these white areas, as in a watercolor masking, then that whiteness will be the color of the material that's been masked off, which is the wood. But we're also going to mask off the very dark areas, because I want to contain the darkness, the burning and scorching effects within these areas. I want to confine that only to those areas. I don't want it bleaching out, contaminating areas around it. I want a nice sharp edges to these areas. So the stencil I've created is actually a 2-part stencil. It's got 2 designs on it. There's one design for the white areas, however intricate they are, including the eye, the glint in the eyes, and these small areas on the belly. And then another design for to contain the dark areas. And by dark I mean both the golden areas and these black areas in inverted commas. Now, I'm holding this up. I can hold this up because this hasn't been cut through like most of these designs are, into puzzle pieces. Obviously I couldn't hold up a puzzle like this, but I've latterly decided through feedback that some people just want the design. They don't want the puzzle. They don't want to have to make a puzzle. A puzzle for them is not something that is a piece of art, even if framed. They just like and want the design. And so it's serendipitous that I've got this, because I've recently made this, and that helps me demonstrate what I'm trying to achieve. If these were cut into puzzle pieces, like all of these dark lines would be, or not all of them, half of them would be cut into puzzle pieces, then I wouldn't be able to hold this up and show you so easily unless it was framed. So, key thing here is masking, and that's what we're going to discuss. That's what I'm going to show you now. Putting that to one side. This is our bare wood. We use special masking tape. There's a little dispenser I've made to make it easier. So we'll just finish off this piece. And then the laser bed. Just to give an idea of what I mean by using the smoke as a means of getting tone on the wood. Black lines, I guess, are straightforward because that's just a clear burn through the wood. But I'm getting another tone on my artworks using smoke. And to give an idea of this, here's a piece of wood that I just happen to have, I just used to surround my frame that I put the pieces in to be lasered, to hold it square. I just noticed that this is the virgin side, the side that's always facing down, and this is the side that faces up. So this, although it's not directly in line with the laser, it's several inches away. And admittedly, this has obviously seen a lot of laser cutting, but this is almost black, not from any direct burning from the laser, but from the smoke generated by the laser. So white, very pale. This is a very rough piece of wood. In fact, that piece there is the native colour of the wood. So even underneath, smoke has gone all in this chamber, in the laser bed chamber. Smoke has gone underneath. I don't know if you can pick out the difference between this edge, which is sitting on some wooden battens I've made, and the back. Even the parts that are on the wooden battens on either end are significantly paler than the parts in the middle, which are only getting under effects of smoke, but the part on top that's getting the most direct of the smoke, but is still several inches away from what I'm lasering, this is like glossy black, and it's incredibly dark. So not to this extreme, but this is to just show you that I can use the effect of smoke over the laser, over the design, to create an intermediate off-white. Because remember, what I'm trying to do is get the best contrast between white and the background colour, because I want the whites to stand out really proud. So I'm using smoke, the smoke that accumulates for the full duration of the cut, which can be several hours. The smoke in the chamber is contaminating deliberately, in this case, the surface of the plywood, and giving a general coating of tar, I think it's tar, and very light scorching, but it's the airborne combusted wood and the steam that evaporates from during the burning process and the scorching process that gives this discoloration to the rest of the wood, even though it's not actually under the laser beam directly. It's the area around the laser beam that's, when this chamber door is closed, the whole area is like fumigated, and that's how I get this intermediate or just dulled colouring effect, which helps contrast it from the white, the protected areas that have been stenciled off, so that contrast is maximised by doing this process. So just finishing off, putting the masking tape covered sheet of plywood into this frame that holds it completely flat. Just putting even tension on, but there shouldn't be any tension on the plywood itself. So that's got the masking tape on it. So we're all ready to go with this, with the process now of cutting. This is done in 3 stages, and the first stage is to cut the 2-part stencil. So the 2-part stencil is the white areas and the dark areas. They're both cut together because it's the same thickness of material and everything, but afterwards I will in turn remove the dark areas before doing the next process, and then I'll remove the white areas before doing the final process. So we're now going to start send to the laser a version of the drawing that just depicts or draws out, lines out the 2 stencil areas. Just before I do start the lasering, just want to point out that each of the 3 laser stages we're going to cover next are each very precisely controlled in terms of the laser power and the speed of the laser, as well as the amount of air being blown at the tip of the laser beam, to remove material and dust and smoke to create so it's a clear path for the laser to cut. So there's 3 things that are very precisely controlled for different purposes for the next 3 different stages that we'll cover. So they are the power of the laser, the speed of the laser, and the amount of air pressure being applied to the tip of the laser to clear the pathway for the laser. And these 3 variables have been arrived at by weeks and weeks of trial and error and experimentation, and the whole process is very clearly documented. I've very clearly documented it for myself, and the stages are clearly documented, so I know what air pressure settings I need to do before firing off a job for each of the 3 different jobs that are all going to be superimposed onto the 1 sheet of plywood here. And each of those 3 steps that are coming up achieve different things, and I'll go through the 3 steps as and when we're doing. So the first step is just to put enough power on the laser and enough speed to cut through this very thin masking tape. So the lid is down. I've selected the job for the stencil. The ventilation is on, the air pressure is on, but it's semi-automatic, so the air pressure will only fire when the laser's firing, so we can't hear the laser, we can't hear the air compressor yet. So just about to start the job number 1. So I don't know if you can hear the air. There's a click when the air starts and a click when it stops. That's the solenoid that I put on this laser. That's the noise it's making. So that click is the solenoid for the air pressure switching on and off. So it's just doing a very thin cut now, just enough to get through the masking tape. A nice clean cut through the masking tape so it can be peeled off. The relevant areas can be peeled off easily. We'll leave that to run now. Here's the control panel of the laser, showing the progress of the cut. So So it's about halfway through at the moment, as you can see from the blue line on the bottom. And it's showing on the right middle, number 1 and number 2, they're the two different designs it's cutting, which happen to both be at 40 millimeters per second at 12.5% in this case. As you can see, the top right, it's the mask for this pattern, MSK, speed 40 millimeters per second, power 12.5 per second. The number 1 and number 2 layers are the white and the dark areas respectively. They're both, from the design point of view, they're two separate sets of lines. When I drew this, I separate, when I do designs like this, I separate different aspects of the drawing into different layers to make it easier to manage, visualize, and separate out for the laser. Remember, I designed this using drawing software, which is totally separate from lasering. I'm using Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, to do my drawings on a graphics tablet. So I'm doing that by hand, but I organize the drawing in layers to, because I have to bear in mind that it's going to be cut by a laser. It's not just going to be printed out. And a laser is done in different layers or different stages. Like this stage here is for just cutting out of a stencil. Some of these same lines may be used for, well, will be used for cutting all the way through, but that's a separate process and will require the laser being set at different parameters to what's required just for cutting through thin masking tape. So it's very nearly finished. As I say, this is the quickest process. It only takes about 6 minutes 20 seconds. The other two processes there, you heard the beep, that process is finished. The other two processes take over 2 hours each, but we'll come on to that when we get there. So lifting up the lid, there's not much smoke in this phase anyway, but remember the smoke is being extracted all the time. But here, is the mask for both the white and the dark areas. It's just been cut out. So now I'll remove. The next process is to do the dark areas, which are the golds of the back of the plovers, the golden plovers, and the blacks of the bellies. So I'm going to remove the mask, just exposing those dark areas, and then the next lasering will cut into those exposed dark areas to do very thorough, deep etching. And the etching is different between the golden backs and the blacks, but they're both cut in the same laser job, because I can basically, and it just it saves time doing them together rather than the separate jobs. So I'm just going to now start removing the mask of the dark areas, and we'll leave all the white areas and all the remaining areas for another phase, another stage. So I'm just going to reposition the camera while I remove the mask. So the laser is kept on all this time because I can't take the risk of turning off and turning it on again, so the head goes back to a beginning home position and then moves back, because I could get the two different stages or multiple stages slightly out of alignment. In order to keep it in perfect alignment, keep the laser on all the time. That's what you can hear in the background. It's just the extractor fan. So my trusty little palette knife, sharp but smooth. I'm just now looking for the dark areas, and here I have to have very good concentration to make sure I'm removing only the dark areas that I need. So I've got to have quite good concentration because I'm dealing with birds in all different positions, wings in different positions, exposing different parts of them. This is my favourite part in a way. I'll put the shoes pieces there because it's quite satisfying doing this. So here is the final version of the design, with all the dark areas removed from the mask. So that only leaves white areas and the general background, the majority general background areas. So we've exposed the bare wood on the dark areas. That's the blacks and the golden areas. The rest is white. Now if you have a look at the white areas here, like right in the center there, I'll hold it steady, you'll see the scorch marks you can see the scorch marks, and this is what I'm deliberately trying to shield or block out. This is the effect I don't want on the wood, so that's why the mask is there. If I didn't have that mask, I wouldn't get such crisp, clean edges to my designs. Imagine this, so here we have the main plover. The white areas which are masked here, which are showing clear signs of scorch marks, they wouldn't look anywhere near as crisp and clean if I didn't have the masking. So, and even on all these little areas like the gannet's wing tips and these areas, so all this is what called dirty, uncontrolled scorching, and I used to have it took me a long time to figure out how to get rid of this, but now I've hopefully mastered it. So let's go on to the next step. Just before going on to the next step, I just want to mention something about original artist editions or original artist prints. As may be apparent from all the steps and stages and interventions, manual interventions by me, the artist, in the production of one of these. And remember, I have to do this for every edition I make. There is a lot of manual work and a lot of decisions and careful practices. So this is not a simple this isn't a simple mechanical reproduction of something as you might get with other printing techniques like giclée photographic prints or something like that, lithographic prints, copper plate prints. Every individual edition that I make has to go through the process you've seen so far, and there's more to come. And so there is a kind of uniqueness to each of them, and more importantly, there's a lot of the artist's involvement in the making of each of them. Just wanted to get that across, that these are what are called original artist editions or prints. Original in that each one is made uniquely and individually by the artist and is not part of some mechanical mass production process. Very important point. So the next step is to do the engraving or etching of the dark and gold areas that we've exposed from the mask. So this next piece is going to be another laser job. It is only going to cut, it's a version of the laser drawings that are only going to cut and etch into the exposed areas that are just removed from the mask, and that way all the scorching will be, there will be no scorching outside of that because that will go on the mask itself. So we'll get nice clean edges. So we'll close the door, and now we'll select the next job. Okay, that phase is complete. So that's just the dark areas, gold and blacks. That took 2 hours, 10 minutes. Now, remember, most of the surface is still got masking tape on, where my hands are showing. All the areas, most of it, 90% is masked still, but we've just done the colour, the golden and black areas, and hopefully we'll get nice crisp edges to these when the masking tape is removed. Look. So you can see where the scorching has taken place outside of the dark areas. Just off the edges of these dark areas, which would be ruined in my opinion if it wasn't masked. So what we're going to do now is remove the remainder of the masking tape apart from the whites. So there's a few small areas of whites, but they're for me the most important. So all the rest of this can go right up to the edge, because this is going to be filled now with lots of detailed lines and cuts. This is where the bulk of the drawing work is actually taking place, and that's all going to be cut with the laser now when I remove the masking tape. selecting the next job, there is two alternative pathways. One is whether it's going to be cut all the way through to make puzzle pieces, or whether it's going to be just a superficial cut to create one solid piece of, let it remain as one solid piece of plywood, and it's not going to be a puzzle. Now in this instance, I'm going to go for the solid engraved piece. So it won't be a puzzle, it'll be one solid piece of plywood. So I had two separate laser files for these two different pathways. They're both very similar. Obviously, the only difference between them is that the cut lines, which are a set of lines of a variety of lines that are in the drawing, the cut lines, I set the power to be much less, so it can't go all the way through. I set the cut power and speed to be the same as a score line, which is another type of line that's used extensively in the drawing. So that will now take well over 2 hours, about 2.5 hours. So we'll leave that and come back to it when it's finished. So that's the third and final laser job completed. Let's see what we've got. Quick glance, it looks fine. Let's take a closer look. So bear in mind, everything is done apart from removing of the white mask areas. So the last laser job was cutting all these lines, what I call score lines, and some of them are actual cut lines. So we take a look at one of these pieces. So it's about 6 millimeters thick. Cut all the way through. In places, on places. Two types of score line. Deep score lines and what I call shading score lines. That's amid the deep engraving of the black and the semi-engraving of the golden areas. So quite a few variations there. But if we remove a little piece of the remaining of masking tape of the white areas, so if I remove some of the remaining masking tape, which is just on the white areas, you'll see, hopefully, what I've been at pains to preserve. Can you see that extra whiteness? So the colour of the tape that's coming off has been discoloured by the smoke and scorching, and underneath is the native virgin wood, which just giving us that brightness that differentiates it from all the rest. And that's what gives us our white. Just got masking tape stuck on me. I'm not at my normal angle for doing this, which is why I'm making a bit of a big zero of it. I won't do it all, I just want to give a quick impression of the whiteness. Maybe this wing. The contrast with the surrounding areas varies because we're dealing with organic materials. The amount of moisture and tar and other colorants that are given off from any given piece of wood, it's not going to be fixed. It varies from piece to piece. And in this particular piece, it's not so dark as I've seen. On others, could be the light. I don't normally do this in the laser bed. I just was doing this. I'm just doing this because it's just occurred to me to mention it before I take it out. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see that very well with the light, but it is noticeable to me. So the piece is out of the laser bed. It's still in the frame, so I need to tip it over to get it out of the laser bed frame I made using these double straps. So I want it intact. I'm going to take out individual pieces. It'll take a long time. There's about, I think, about 230 pieces in that one. Just strap it in. Flip it over. Take off it. Few pieces stuck to the laser bed. Now we'll flip this over on the board. and voila. So not all the white masking tape is off. We'll do that next in a studio. So I've just signed it with this pyrography pen, this being the limited edition. So just a layer of standard limited edition signature, dating and numbering. Now into the airing wax for airing, and it would go, use this for drying if it's varnished as well. This is the final laser cut and engraved panel, but with the masking of the white areas still in place. And here all the remaining white masking has been removed, and this is the final effect.